Okay, I've gone ahead and replaced this code here with my own personal code. Now if we press F5 or come up here to debug and hit start debugging, we'll see that our application will in fact go fetch the data from the One Season website and display it in a relatively easy to read and easy to use list. Notice that all but one of these in this particular list has the IPO status of request, and that's going to be really important for us in a minute. Now that information in and of itself is very interesting, but it really doesn't help us to accomplish what we're trying to do, and that is alert us that the IPO status just changed and give us the opportunity to quickly get in there and make our IPO request. So what we're going to do is come back here to the design page, and then we're going to double click on our timer, and that will create our timer tick. Now let's go ahead and plug in our timer code. You can get that from the forum. Now let me explain this really quick. We've got this IPO clear. All that's going to do is eliminate all of the data that we have built up in our array so that we don't just keep adding to it and increasing the size of data that we've got in our data source. We only want 50, and since we're fetching 50 each time, if we don't clear it, then every time it ticks, we'll just add another 50 to the list. We don't want that. So we clear it, and then we fetch a new XML from One Season, and then we parse through it just like we did before. And now we've got some logic added in here that we didn't have in the load page because now we want to make certain that if the status changes, we actually do something with it. Now, first thing here, we've got that flag I told you about earlier. It starts off as false when we create the form, when we start the application. So it should be false until we change it to something else. So if triggered equals false, then we're going to check the player status for each player in the list that we got in the XML. If the player status is not equal to request, then we're going to, in this case, launch Firefox. All this here, all that does is launch Firefox and give it a web page to automatically start. Then once we've launched Firefox, we set our triggered flag to true. That way, when we get back up here to triggered equals false, well, triggered will no longer equal false, so we won't check to see if player status changed anymore, which means that we won't launch the website anymore or do anything else that we put in this particular section. So that way, we trigger once, doesn't trigger anymore. Now you could, if you wanted to, come in here and change some of this information, like you could change Firefox to Winamp, and then instead of having a website, you could put in your favorite song, make certain you put the full path or relative path to Winamp. Then when the process starts, it will launch Winamp with your song. You can also duplicate this information several times to launch several different processes. You can play Winamp, you can launch Firefox, you can send out text alerts, anything that you can create a process for. I'll leave that up to you. However you want to do that is fine with me. But at this particular point in time, it should get that list. 5 seconds later, when it checks the timer, it will get a new list, see if status has changed to anything from request, and if it has, then it should launch the website. We'll go ahead and test that out here real quick. Press F5. Notice that we've got our application. First item is issued, and now bingo, right on time, 5 seconds later, launch the website. I'm connected, and here you can see Chase Utley just released. I could press request, and I've already done that, so I'll go ahead and minimize this. But notice that now it's been more than 10 seconds and it didn't launch the website a second time. So our limiter there has worked, and we are not going to just keep repeatedly every 5 seconds opening up the website. That would get kind of annoying. So now we have a functional application. What you'll want to do is click over here on File, and you're going to Save All. Now I've already saved it, but first time you save all, it will actually pop up and ask you where you want to save it. And that'll be really important for you to be able to find the files after you build it. Now once you've saved it, click here on Build and build your project. This is important because so far all we've been doing is running it in debug mode, and when we want to run this application in the future, we want to run it as an application, not in debug mode. Now we can find this by going to the location where you saved your project, and then in the subdirectories there you'll see one called bin. If you go under bin, there will be two folders. Debug, which will have all of the code necessary for running the application in debug mode. Notice there's a lot of individual files here. We don't need all those files. If we come in here under release, we'll see there are a lot fewer files. In fact, we still have one of the debug files here. This PDB file is actually a debug file. You can delete it if you want to, and everything will still run just fine. So once you've deleted that or not, doesn't really matter, you'll have these two files left, and then just click on the executable and run it anytime you want to. So start up the day, run the IPO alert, and it'll just sit there and wait for one of the statuses to be anything other than request, and then boom, it'll open up your web page and you'll be able to make your request. Okay, so hopefully that has helped answer a bunch of questions. Hopefully it's helped you to be able to make this individualized IPO alert that you can run on your desktop. And who knows, perhaps you've learned a little bit something you hadn't ever known before. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to contact me on the forums and I'll do what I can to help.